Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the Kursk Offensive update. And looking at this mapping, all I want to say is Hail Hydra. Anyway, Hail Hydra aside, a lot of cover, a lot of complication. So the pro-Russian source that this has been a cover that I'm using as a primary source to cover and try to keep track with all the things. One of the sources that I'm using, they themselves are very confused as well. No, they have published like three different updates, and three different updates have portions that contradicts one another. No, they invalidated their own information. The mapping drastically changed. So it's very complicated. And but I've digested it all, and also based on geolocations and reports coming from the Russian Defense Ministry, I kind of pieced together what the hell is happening. I've covered the general sense of this in the situation report in the SIP that is published on the DPA War channel. And if you have never watched it before, I highly recommend you to watch it, especially for the new people who have never seen a DPA SIP before. And so we're going to cover the situation around here. So we go into I've breaked up this entire front line in multiple flanks, in case you do not know. So we have this is the western flank, and then we have the northern flank, the eastern flank, Sudja sector, as well as the southern flank. So this area here is the southern flank, Sudja, and then the eastern flank, northern flank, western flank. So yeah, so this is a flower. So we're gonna go into the eastern flank first. So over at the eastern flank, the latest we have is that we previously have this update that I mentioned, that the Russian Defense Ministry mentioned fighting over at Topino, as well as this location called the Obschi Kolodes. And I previously mentioned that this looks like some impossible place because it's so far away from the front line. And now we have some kind of idea how they reached there. The Ukrainian forces basically have attacked through the countryside again. So they attacked through the countryside and managed to reach Topino. And as the main reason is they're trying to bypass the Russian forces over at Karinevo. They have been trying to attack Karinevo, and they have not been able to break through this line. So they do the next best thing: maneuver warfare, go in to flank the enemy. And there's still Russian forces over there. So unfortunately, the flanking movement did not seem to work. And so and then over at this area here, the Ukrainian forces is counterattacking as well, with the Russian forces still holding Snagos. The Ukrainian forces tried to retake Snagos. They previously captured it, but it did not work out. And by this point, it's starting to look like, very unprofessional. And so the Russian forces are also similarly over at Ogovka. The Ukrainian forces similarly are attacking around this area as well. Information coming from Ryba, they say that are fighting underway over at Ohivka, which is Ogovka. And if they are fighting around here, means that the Russians are there, because if the Russians are not there, there's nothing to fight for. So that is the current situation over this area here in the Eastern Front. And it looks like this front line is extremely difficult to break, because the Russian forces defending Karinevo, Topino, and Snagos managed to hold the line, which means that this line has been pretty strong so far. So the Russians definitely do not want the Ukrainians to go go west. So they are stuck over here. But however, this northern flank is particularly complicated. So first thing first to note is that the Russian forces are stuck. There is some forces stuck over at Kruklenkoe. Of course, they are also over here in Kremianoe, and of course we already have this thing over here where the Ukrainians try to hit, but they didn't manage to go through. So then we have this massive chunk of countryside between the two chain of settlements. So this countryside around here is where the Ukrainians has been previously geolocated over these two locations, and they were also reported south of Zurafli. So this entire area is how the Ukrainians managed to travel around, and through these areas they managed to attack Kauchuk, Triptokovka, Zurafli, and they managed to penetrate around the countryside and now hit over at this place called Obchiv. I suddenly don't know how to pronounce this. Obchiv Skolodes. So that's how they managed to go there again through the countryside. So this is how the Ukrainians are breaking the lines. They are going around the Russian forces that is defending certain settlements and continue to appear in location where the Russians do not expect, which is why there is a lot of complications. And even for Ryba, the pro-Russian source that is trying to cover the situation, keep changing their mappings. So, and what we do have is that based on latest information, the Ukrainian forces have concentrated huge amount of forces around here. They concentrated forces in the region of Leshchimka, Semenovka, Shaposhchenikovo, as well as Otretnoye. So with these regions here, which they are concentrating their forces, which also means that these locations are captured by Ukrainian forces, and so most likely how they are going about it is because the Ukrainians have full control of the highway. So this highway all the way to around to this point is now under firm Ukrainian control. There is probably no Russian forces around here because there's no fighting being reported around here. The previous fighting was reported over at Malaya Doknia, and the Ukrainian forces managed to capture this. And we do not know where was the next place that the Russians are resisting the Ukrainian forces, other than at Kruglenkoe. So, and in this area here, there is already fighting being reported over at Kromersky Biki as well as Durovo Bobrik. And the Ukrainians are already starting to push out some of maybe the Vanguard, the initial forces. Maybe these are the troops that is sent out to divert attention. They are trying to go into certain places. So very similar to the situation over at this southern sector, where the Ukrainian forces was first discovered over at Ivanovsky as well as Balaya. However, the real push is actually through Giri. This is actually where the real push is. So this is just diversion attempt, and maybe we are seeing the similar situation around here where the Ukrainian forces go up this. I think it's a railroad. This looks like a railroad to me. Yeah, I think it's a railroad there, but there's some roads around here. This is still pretty much a countryside, right? Oh, this is a road. Yeah, this looks like a railroad to me. So anyway, the Ukrainian forces are attacking Kromsky Beki as well as Durovo Burbik, and maybe these are advanced forces, and they are probably going to push elsewhere. They're going to divert attention away from where the real push is, where this main force around here, where this main force is going to push. No, not exactly sure where they're going to go towards. They're probably going to follow this road down towards Lugov. This is where the Lugov, this road leads to. But of course, given how the Ukrainians are now maneuvering in the Kursk offensive, I don't think they're going to just go straight down the highway, or the main road. Maybe this force, this vanguards may try it, but the main force probably will go through the countryside to reach there. And the distance from Lugov to the current front line is around 20 kilometers. So it's not far, not exactly far. It's doable. But that depends on where the Russians are holding the line. Tentatively, we have no information about the main force. Where is the Russian main force with their regular army? It's non-existent at this moment. There is already footages, videos, reports of Russian troops and equipment getting deployed into the Kursk region, but somehow we haven't seen them appear yet. So they only seem to appear from now and then, and it seemingly feels like the main fighting that we are seeing right now is only by the special forces. The special forces are the one that is engaging the Ukrainian forces. So while the Ukrainians are actually just swarming all over the place in the Kursk, they haven't met the actual Russian military, and this is very concerning because whatever the Ukrainians are planning to do, what is the initial planning, even if it's to capture ground, they need to know when to stop. They are just keep pushing outwards, but are they really going to capture control such a huge ground with a limited group of forces? Because I don't think they have enough troop to capture a huge expanse of ground. And it would be dangerous if you capture too much ground and stretch yourself too thin. And it is made worse that as the Ukrainians continue to push, yes, on paper, on this mapping, it looks fantastic. It looks amazing that the Ukrainians are capturing this much ground. However, every kilometers that they, or every hour they are staying within this area in the Kursk offensive, they're getting attrition away. There is countless videos already of Russian airstrikes, artillery strikes, Lancet drone strikes, FPV drone strikes, and a lot of equipment has been lost on the Ukrainian side. And yet, a lot of equipment lost. Yes, they captured a lot of grounds, but they have not met the main Russian force yet. So where is the main Russian force? That's a big problem. And if this army get attrition too much, they would have too little and too few heavy equipment to deal with the actual Russian force. So that would be a huge concern. And the Russians are using airstrikes and helicopters to take out Ukrainian vehicles as well. So the lack of air cover would be a big problem as well. Clearly, the Ukrainians have drones. The drones are definitely trying to replace or make up for some of this deficiency with the lack of the air force. But the Russians have drones too, and the Russian drone seems to be superior. So that's a big problem as well. So we shall see how this develop around here. The Russian forces over at Krylenkoye, another thing to note is that because of the way how the Ukrainians maneuver, there is a possibility that even if there is this encirclement that is happening around here, Russian forces could theoretically still travel through supposedly enemy territory to resupply and reinforce, or even for them to retreat out, like without meeting any Ukrainian forces. That is a possibility. So that's how sparse things are at this moment. The front line is not that firm, so this is not a rigid front line yet. The only rigid front line that we are seeing now is the Russian line around Kerenevo at Snogaz, and maybe at Kremyanoe as well as Krylenkoye. These are the Russian lines. The Ukraine lines are over at this area at Lyubimovka, Obukovka, and over all the way to Lyunadovo. And maybe we are talking about Nikoski and Maladoknia. Everything else is just a wild west. There is no firm line at this moment. The Ukrainians are trying to create this firm line around this area here. Everything outside is just raiding and touring around. They're just like tourists. So this is just important to note that there is despite all this mapping, do note that the Ukrainian main line is not that far away. The Ukrainian main line is probably around here. This is where the main line is, and the Russian line is actually like somewhere else. They're not even at the same place. They're not facing each other in a rigid front line like we are used to in the rest of the Ukraine war. So that is something to note. And so this force that is gathering around here, we also have to look at what could be the main objective. A lot of talk has been focusing on Lvov and the Kursk nuclear power plant, and I think this is potentially realistic at this moment. If they are already getting a big force around here, there's a concentration of Ukrainian forces, and they could potentially go for Lvov. Lvov will probably be needed as a forward operating position to attack into the Kursk nuclear power plant. Russians are already anticipating this possibility as they are already building new fortification in the front positions of the nuclear power plant region. So the Russians are not discounting the possibility that the Ukrainians can go this far. So another surprise way of the Ukrainians could potentially go towards is through all this countryside. And I think the Ukrainians have proven to be really good at going through all this countryside. They have very good coordination and planning and command to probably pull this off. So the power plant is around here. So the highway of E38 is there. The Ukrainian forces could potentially go down the railway line and break out into the countryside, or maybe go down the other way. They can go from even multiple directions to make sure that the Russians can't catch where are they, and they can potentially, you know, go all over the place and go from multiple different angles to reach the power plant. And most likely they will probably do something like this. They break up into multiple fire teams, you know, go into multiple different directions and force the Russians to guess where is the main push. And perhaps there is no main push. Every push is real, and it's just that there are a lot of small fire teams, and the Russians will have to split up their forces to try to defend, and it's going to be extremely difficult to command such a defense line. So I believe this is what the Ukrainians could be doing if this turn out to be true, and they are going to make a push for the nuclear power plant. That is a very high possibility. So we go into the eastern front. At the eastern front lines, the Ukrainian forces captured Kositsa as well as Mykolaiv. However, the Russians maintained control of Martinovka as the Ukrainians tried to push but didn't manage to succeed. Ukrainian forces are still trying to attack Roskoye Poroshnoi, but have no success as well. The Russian forces are holding these two areas. However, despite their holding these two areas, this door seems to be open. The Ukrainian forces basically went around Martinovka and they basically drive down the highway and met Russian forces over at Bolshoye Sodatskoye. Russian forces are reportedly in the area of Berdin and Novosonitsky. So the Ukrainians are basically, as you can see, they are just going around all these strongholds. They are just going around, and the Russians cannot leave the stronghold, right? Because they want to defend the stronghold or defend the settlement. So the Ukrainians are just penetrating around, and there's a possibility that they may just go around it as well again to continue to travel and move around unimpeded. And this is a possibility. And Hail Hydra. it just look like tentacles to me, you know. It look like octopus. But yeah. So all these calamaris, you know, is going to continue. I think this so far the Ukrainian seems to be able to keep up with this, which is extremely impressive on its own, because they never operated in this way before. Like even for the Balaklia offensive, where they recaptured, you know, what other people call the Kharkiv offensive in the late 2022, that was not this kind of thing. That was just a blitz through the front line, and there's basically nothing behind. There's no defenders whatsoever. The Russians was routed. This is not the case. The Russians are not routed per se. The Russians are reacting. They're trying to pour into the region, and the first responders are the special forces, and they are just defending the various places, and the Ukrainians are just going around them. So yeah, maneuver warfare. Some people say that this is not, but to me this is exactly what maneuver warfare is like. So we go into the Sudzha sector. At the city of Sudzha, Ukrainian forces captured more grounds. They have recaptured this area here that was previously claimed to be taken by the Russians. However, the Russians are indeed in this region. They are at Dmitrovkov as well as at Agronom. Ukrainian forces was reportedly seen at Budanrevka, but no, not confirmed. And the Russian capture of Merne is also now in question, because Ukrainian forces was geolocated, driving pretty nicely along the roads, pretty safe, and no fighting whatsoever. I think this capture of Merne might be reversed very soon, because Ukrainian forces have captured Mykolaiv, and from this region here, going south and going around and circling Agronom is not impossible. Taking undefended Merne is not impossible, and with the Ukrainian forces over in Manovka, Marovka, right? Manovka or Morovka. They could also easily, just continue to advance into the rear positions. This is all very possible, and the Russian forces is just going to be encircled if they do not receive reinforcement to them. And this reinforcement is going to be very, very hard to arrive because of the situation in the entirety of the front line. And if I zoom out, you probably see the problem. Ukrainian forces are now attacking in new sectors. And any Russian forces that are supposedly going to travel down this main road through Belizia is going to be distracted into trying to hold back the Russians in this area here. And if the Ukrainians manage to break this line, then the entire front line around this area here will collapse, and the Ukrainian forces would be able to push out. And that is the main thing around this push over on the southern flank. And this southern flank is now pretty much confirmed. Ukrainian forces, after the capture of Plekovo, they were attacking Boki and Spanoy. And Spanoy has fallen based on the latest information. Ukrainian forces have taken it. Boki still holds, still under Russian control. Ukrainian forces was allegedly also attacking Komishanoe, and they broke through at Giri, and probably most likely have captured Giri. However, the attempt to push to Belitsa as well as the other directions has been disastrous. Russian forces have drone strike the hell out of these Ukrainian Vanguard forces. A lot of vehicles has been destroyed and a lot of casualties. So there is no indication of Ukrainian reaching Belitsa yet, but these drone strikes must have caused a lot of problems for the Ukrainian forces, because they probably will not be able to push as far as they previously wanted. The Ukrainian forces previously that appeared over at Ivanovsky as well as Belaya now looks like some kind of a diversion attempt. So to draw Russian forces into the wrong position, to thinking that they are actually, the Ukrainians are pushing here, whereas the real push is going to come out of Giri. And this is fantastic idea. This is a very, very fantastic idea from the Ukrainian side. However, the problem with modern warfare is everything is transparent. The drones are flying everywhere. They are monitoring the Ukrainian forces, and they basically drone strike the hell. And if you can be drone strike, means that your position has been exposed, and that's a big problem. So now, whether the Ukrainians can still push out from Giri is unclear, but if they could, taking Belisa would be pretty important. If not, they can. I think they have to. If not, they have to drive through the forest, and then they can actually go down all these highways and then the countryside and wreak havoc, or whatnot. So, and then they can go all over the place. The Russians will have to keep guessing where are they. So it's going to be very, very difficult for the Russian command. So every day the regular forces do not enter the battle at this front line. Is another day where the strategic or tactical situation on the ground get more complicated for the Russians, because you don't even know where the enemy is, and they can be anywhere. And that's a big problem. You need a lot more forces than the Ukrainians. Probably the Russians will need 5 to 10 times more troops than the Ukrainians to contain such a strategy. This tactic is very hard to contain. As long as the Ukrainians can continue to resupply and refuel, and then they can continue to do this, infinitely until the Russians give up. Which clearly the Russians wouldn't give up. So the Russians have to deploy a lot more forces to surround the entire area here, and then start to slowly push in. So this is going to take a lot of manpower and equipment, and then before you know it, Ukrainian will start to launch another attack from another place. There's a possibility as well. So not so simple, but also if anyone can do it, the Russians, it's going to be the Russians, because the Russians have the manpower. But the problem is, where is the manpower? We haven't seen it yet, and that's a conundrum. So in this area, you can see, given all these geolocations, at Giri, Ukrainian forces clearly have already taken the settlement. The entrance and exit has been taken. They are in the center, so they have captured Giri. But what's next is going to be the problem. So they will have to travel through and cross the bridge, and and then break into Belize. So we shall see how this develops over the next 24 hours. Russian Defense Ministry also reported shelling over at Miropilia and Mauritius. So this could also be indicative that the reserve force for this southern flank troops are coming from this area here. This is where they're going to resupply or reinforce the line around here. So we shall see. So anyway, interesting development. And beyond the main front lines, the Ukrainians also tried to create either diversions, or they're trying to see whether they can break through new lines. And attack was reported over at Kolotilovka, and this attack at Kolotilovka actually triggered the Russian forces into an evacuation of the population of Krasnoyarovsky, and which is this entire area here. Now they are doing a mass evacuation of civilians, and however, the Ukrainian attack in this area did not break through. The Russian border managed to hold the line, and another attack was actually reported in the Kharkiv region over at Bezimino. The Ukrainian forces also tried to attack from Timofeyevka, but the Russian lines managed to hold. So, and both forces, the attack is not big. It's not a very big force that is trying to push through. So if the Ukrainians sent a bigger force, they would easily break through, just like what happened over in this initial offensive at this sector at Suja crossing. So the Ukrainians are definitely trying to confuse the Russians, trying to mislead the Russians, or try to get the Russians to spread out their forces as much as they can. So this is definitely playing chess. The two sides are playing chess against each other, and trying to test each other out. So very, very interesting. However, just now we did the premiere for the situation report, and as we chit chat in the live chat, there is a interesting possibility that this, or is it in the live chat, or is it in Telegram? Maybe it's in Telegram comments, that the Russians may be deliberately, like I said, where is the main force? The main force is not existing. However, right from day one of the the offensive, the Russian Air Force has been super active. The drone force has been super active. And until today, every single day there's countless helicopter airstrikes, and also drone strikes all the way. Ukrainian forces, as they move along every kilometers, every place that they go, they are attritioning. They are losing equipment, they are losing men. The moment they try to sit in the forest, they got struck by air strikes or drone strikes, and it's very hard to hide. And they keep losing equipment, keep losing men. I wonder if this is a tactic. So it could be a Russian strategy to attrition the Ukrainian forces, so that by the time whatever the Ukrainians have planned to do, they do not have the manpower or equipment to do it. And the Russian main force push in, it will be a lopsided battle. Not to mention there's already an air superiority issue, where the Russians have air superiority around here. So I'm just putting this out there. Yes, this, as far as we can see right now, it looks like Ukrainian is having some great victories at this moment on paper, on the map. But it may not be the reality. It may not be the meta, the undercurrent that is currently happening in this war. The 4D, 5D chess that is currently being played. Maybe this is exactly what the Russians wanted. They deliberately have a very poorly defended border to lure the Ukrainians in, and the Ukrainians went in, and the Russians didn't even have the regular army there. And they are just using drones and airstrike to weed down and attrition away the Ukrainian forces that is totally out of where they are usually hiding. If they're in Ukraine, they have proper hiding spot, proper places to resupply, reinforce. Now they are in enemy territory, and there is no good place to hide, because the Russians did not even build any fortifications around here. So there's no place to hide, there's no trenches, they have to build new ones. and they get exposed, and they become easy targets for airstrikes and drone strikes. I wonder if this is a deliberate strategy from the Russians to just force the Ukrainians into open land, open territory, and then got strike, and then so that they can if more effectively destroy these forces. But I still think that Putin is pretty unhappy with whatever is happening, because the breakthrough is pretty huge. It's too big. Even if you want to play into this kind of potential strategy of using airstrikes and drones, yeah, but this incursion is still pretty much a PR disaster for Russia. So it is what it is. Anyway, I believe I've covered everything. So anyway, this is the Kursk update, the Kursk Offensive update. So this is recorded just after the publish of the situation report. So any information since then, yeah, this definitely clearly not in this video because I can't read the future. Anyway, thank you for watching. Do press the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next update. And the new guys, subscribe. See you guys.